Okay, can you explain for someone who just bought Lyra and read the manual but doesn't quite get the general view from this? What's the sound flow of the Lyra? So now this is the setup I used before. Maybe you can reset it to like the simplest layout and then go through the sound flow of the Lyra.
So that's actually doesn't matter because this is the structure of synthesis is the same. Doesn't matter how you set all these knobs and buttons. So the idea is, you see, this is like structure, like something go from many to less and less, and this is reflected in the interface. So in the base of synthesis we have 8 independent oscillators. Each of them has its own triggering pads and tuning knobs. So you can tune each oscillator to some specific note and then trigger it using these sensors. So what is the main difference between Lyra and regular synthesizers with piano keyboards? So in regular synthesizer, for example 8 voice polyphonic synth, you retune each oscillator depending on what you play on this keyboard, right? So for example, you play some chord and the internal engine distributes pitch of different notes to different oscillators. So here each oscillator has its own triggering pads, and you can tune this oscillator to some specific note. So Lyra is a microtonal instrument. It has no any scales inside, so just constant tuning from the lower to the higher note across full range. So it has sense to mention that oscillators on the left side have lower range than oscillators on the right side. So for example, but for both we have really big range of sounds. So here this is lowest note, and here lowest note will be infrasound. So it's intended, like in most of instruments, that lower sounds are on the left side. But of course you can don't follow this principle, because each oscillator has really big range. So then we have some functions that that have one control for 2 oscillators. So that is why I call that oscillators organized by groups, like by pairs. So pair. So for each pair we have switch fast and slow envelope. So fast envelope will sound will fade away much quicker, and slow envelope, it will take something like 15 seconds to fade out. So also we have modulation amount that is one for both oscillators, and sharp knob that is also one for both oscillators. So modulation amount is amount of frequency modulation, so don't mix it up with digital FM synthesis. It's not FM in digital way, because in FM it's actually not frequency but phase modulation, if to say more correct. And this is real frequency modulation, so it's much more dirty way of how to combine 2 frequencies, and much more odd harmonics from this way of combination. And you can set amount of this modulation using this knob. And a sharp knob is a mixer between triangle and square signals. So that is why I called it sharp, because in frequency response point of view it adds high harmonics to signal, and this knob also works for both oscillators in this pair. And also you have modulation source, so it can be nothing if it is in the middle position, can be the next pair of oscillator, this one for example, so 3 4, and this in the lower position this is LFO or total feedback or CV. So I will explain what is total feedback, LFO and CV a bit later. So and then two pairs of oscillators then combined in one group, and we have two groups here. So one group, each group has a special dedicated common pitch, so you can dial a chord here, and using this pitch knob you can transpose this chord up and down, and you have hold knob that so you can make like sustained sound and use one group like a drone, and the next group you can use for playing some tunes. But of course you can use both of them to play something like drone in drone mode. So then you have maybe the most complex thing here. You can dial structure of FM modulations. So this is 4 switches and one switch in the middle. So if we have this switch in the lower position, then we have two independent cross modulation loops. So it's reflected in these inscriptions. So if you do like this pair will modulate this pair, and this pair will modulate this pair. So it's like a cross FM feedback. And because this is a feedback loop, it can produce interesting sounds, often not expected, especially in some. So if when you will start to work with Lyra, you will obviously notice that some small changes in knobs position can produce really drastic changes in sound, because it can enter in some modulation, feedback, self-excitation, or jumps to another harmonic or something like this. So that is really, despite it's very simple, this interface and the way of synthesis, but because of this that I call organismic behavior, so a lot of non-linearity and a lot of mutual dependencies between different blocks, it can produce quite many different sounds, and often small changes in knob position can lead to a big change in sound. So also there is a lot of not obvious nonlinear stuff here. For example, pitch knob in the lower positions start to oscillators in deep feedback start to produce another type of sound, like low frequency clicks that can resemble drum machine or something like this. So and you can dial this FM connection using these switches. So if you switch this switch to upper position, then you will have one big loop. So it reflected like modulation from 3-4 source will be changed on modulation from 5-6. So this oscillator 3-4 will impact 5-6 like this, and 7-8 will impact 1 and 2, right? So it will go like this direction, the like sequence of modulation. So it will be like one big loop of modulation. Of course, you can break this loop in any point if you switch in another position, and also you can choose as a modulation source LFO. So LFO is here. I will speak a bit later about it. Also, you can choose total feedback or CV input that we have on the rear panel. So if you put this switch on the upper position, so this source 3 variants of modulation source will be switched to total feedback. So total feedback, this is signal that we takes from the very end after the distortion of all synthesizer, after FX unit, after distortion. You take signal and put on the very beginning like modulation operator. So also we have vibrato, so it has no any knobs, but this is quite a unique type of vibrato. It's not one LFO generator for all generators, but independent LFO generator for each channel, for each voice, and all of them has a unique frequency. So when you switch on vibrate and play, it will produce not like one shaking sound, but like a cloud of different tunes, different modulations. And in my opinion, it's really interesting and unique feature, because it creates a cloud of modulations, not just.
So what does vibrate? The modulation or the
frequency
of the sound?
Yes, frequency of all oscillators. what is LFO? So LFO is also quite unique here. So it's complex LFO. It has two operators, two independent, depends on position, two LFOs, and it produces output for LFO modulation, either using summing of these waveforms, either multiplication. So and it will be multiplication or it will be a summing of these waveforms. Also, these generators can work in sync. So then this is
which is multiplication and which is addition?
Multiplication, and this is addition.
Or
yes, it's like logical operations, and it's always multiplication, and or
adds them.
Yes, add them together. So also it can work in sync, where this will be the master oscillator, and the slave oscillator. So using these LFOs, you can produce complex waveforms, complex behavior, and use it even like a simple word sequencer.
So the sound from the oscillators, when it gets out, first goes into this box. Yeah.
Yes, but this is LFO. It's not something that's after the summing of this generator. So I put it here because it affects all synthesizer. So after mixing of these two groups, it goes to delay unit. So hyper LFO is just modulation source. So you can use it either if you put any of switches to this position, to LFO mode, either it can be used here. You see, so it can modulate delay time. So you can choose between these two waveforms and set up amount of modulation. So LFO, it's just modulation source for oscillators or delay.
Okay, so the sound you produce here goes into this area, which, if selected to LFO, ask this what to do. Yes.
So if you select to LFO, you can modulate using LFO delay lengths of delay lines. So with this delay, what we have here, we have delay line 1 and delay line 2. We have feedback mix, that is need no explanation what is it, and we have two modulation knobs that defines depth of modulation of each delay line, and we have modulation source that can be self-modulation, very unique feature. I really proud about invention of this feature. So audio signal a little bit specially prepared after the delay line uses like a source for modulation of length of delays, and it creates a complex, weird, chaotic sound. Depends on depth of the modulation, from slight twistings up to noise. So it can even disassemble pure tone to pure noise using this self-modulation. And also you can use as source for modulation LFO and switch between square and triangle waveforms.
What's the time knobs in the after mode? This arrow.
This is length of delay lines 1 and 2. So this is two-tap delay, and but they have common feedback. So this like very simple reverb. So you can use it for very simple weird reverb like sound, because they feed each other by feedback, and it creates a lot of cross reflections and complex reflections inside this.
So if this is on self, this doesn't do anything.
Yes, for delay,
Correct.
but it can do something for voices.
For voices it does something, but not
Yes.
for delay.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and
yes.
if this is in the middle,
So you have no any sources for modulation,
Oh,
so
okay.
these knobs will do nothing.
okay. And this switch, the only difference is the waveform, or is there some extra effects in one of these?
No, just waveforms.
Mhm.
What waveform you take from LFO. And the last part is distortion. So this is parallel distortion, so you can adjust not only amount of drive, but also amount of mix between distortion, distorted and dry signal. And it's quite useful because you can add just a small harshness to the sound, not just like all or nothing like in ordinary distortions. And you can, of course, you can have totally clean sound if you put mix fully clockwise, counterclockwise position. And on the rear panel we have phone's output, main output, external in. So this is you can put any external signal with a range of line output. It means around 1 volt of intensity. So this socket stays exactly on the point where a mix of voices enters the delay line. So this is like additional mixing channel, and you can add to voices sound. You can add some external signal. So if you play nothing, it will be used only just like FX processor for external sound. So hold gate, you can apply some gate signals using these knobs. You can use some external gate signal to trigger these oscillators. CV delay you can use. So if you plug something here, it automatically switches off internal sources, and then you can use external sources for modulation of the delay line.
So either CV voices or CV delay will turn off the mod delay box and use the device as modulation.
So it will still use these knobs, but
okay.
these switches will do nothing, because on this point it will be switched on external source. And for CV voices, it will affect only voices that pair of voices with this switch on the lower position, CV. And like a trick, I recommend put here some audio signal, for example, like a signal from another synth or from drum machine, and then it will work like FM modulation source. So not just like changing pitch, but changing timbre. And for example, very interesting result if you put here another synthesizer with quite low notes that you play here, and then it will start to work like a kind of hard sync. Voices of Lyra will follow this CV modulation source and produce like overtones.
Can you sing to Lyra with like a microphone? And
Yes,
make the Lyra
yes.
play what you sing.
So it's
Kind of.
it's too far shot to say that it will play what you sing, but you can definitely use your voice even connected to this socket like CV for voices, and it will produce some overtones for your voice and follow in some small range by special this dedicated voices that you assigned this socket. So it will be quite interesting effect, but don't expect that Lyra will sing the same notes, that plays the same note.
It will make some kind of echo, like some.
Not
like an
even.
extra source.
Yes. So you as effects unit, yes, you can use it like very nice echo, analog like echo with warm tone and a lot of harmonics. Of course, you can process your voice using delay section and distortion section. Now we speak about more complex, like using voice of for FM modulation of voice speech. So here possibilities of Lyra quite limited, but actually very interesting.
I should put my microphone in external input and then have reverb of.
Yes, and
which
actually
can modify with FB and makes very good effects.
Yes, and actually that is why quite a lot of people use Lyra like FX processor, and that is why we did it as a separate module for Eurorec and call it Lyra FX, Lyra-8 FX. So this is exactly this section, delay and distortion, put in a separate Eurorec module.
And what kind of device should you put in CV delay section? What does it expect like?
So any kind of standard CV sources like Eurorec LFOs, etc., step sequencers, but also you can try to, actually I haven't tried, so you can also try to put here audio signal and effect delay using some external audio signal, so the result can be very interesting.
So I've noticed I usually have better results when I use either total feedback with the melodies or turn it off and use vibrato. Is there some reason that if you use both it kind of sounds too much, or is there something I should do to get the best out of using both these switches?
It's very depends on amount of modulation, so you can don't make it too deep, and then I think you can use it both. So it very depends on what sound would you like to get as the output. So Lyra can play from very melodic and pleasant mellow tones up to harsh noise. So it very depends of what style of music would you like to create using Lyra.